This was Saab. They'd been making airplanes, good ones, military stuff. And now they looked at the automotive industry and essentially said, we can do better. Their first car was called the 92, and it was immediately strange. The whole body was made from one piece of metal with cutouts for the windows, not stamped panels bolted together like everyone else was doing. One piece. Like an aircraft fuselage. The engine was a two-stroke two-cylinder. Then it got a two-stroke triple. Eventually, it inherited a four-stroke V4 that was literally two-thirds of a Ford the Fifth Six. They just chopped off two cylinders. The 92, 93, 94, 95, and 96 were all effectively the same car. Constant improvements throughout. Same basic platform. They remained in production for over 30 years. About halfway through that run, Saab introduced their second-ever new car. Not their third. Not their 10th. Their second, the 99. This was 1967. And this car would form the basis of everything Saab would build for the next quarter century. Here's what you need to understand about the 99. It wasn't designed by car people. It was designed by airplane people. And airplane people think about crashes very differently. Car manufacturers in the 1960s were still treating crashes as events where you just hoped the car held together long enough for the ambulance to arrive. Saab's engineers looked at crash safety the way they looked at aircraft fuselages. They used load paths, deliberate structural channels that direct impact force through a vehicle in a controlled, predictable way. In an airplane, these paths distribute stress across the airframe during hard landings, turbulence, anything that strains the structure. When Saab applied this thinking to their car, the 99 featured a 1-inch thick reinforcement running in a perfectly straight line from the top of the A-pillar down to the base of the chassis, purpose-built to protect occupants in a rollover. They tested it by dropping the car from 8 feet in the air. The car barely noticed. They documented the results. They kept improving. The 99 had a structure approximately a third stiffer than other cars on the market. A third stiffer doesn't sound dramatic until you understand what that rigidity actually bought them. Crash safety, obviously, but also something nobody expected. The car didn't squeak. It didn't rattle. The doors closed with a solid thunk instead of a tinny clang. And because the chassis was so rigid, the suspension could do its job properly. The handling was exceptional. All of this from engineers who figured that if you're going to build a structure, you might as well build it right. The 99 lineage delivered a genuinely remarkable list of industry firsts. The first ever side impact door beams. Before this car, nobody was putting steel reinforcement inside doors specifically to protect passengers from T-bone collisions. Saab did it first. First headlight wipers. This was Sweden. It snows there. Your headlights get covered in slush and road grime, and suddenly you can't see. Saab's solution was elegantly obvious. The doors extended past the sill. This seems like a tiny detail until you understand why. When you step out of a car in winter, your pants brush against the door sill, covered in road salt, snow, and dirt. You walk around with a gray stripe on your leg all day. Saab's doors overlap the sill so your pants stay clean. The world's first seat heaters. Sweden is cold. Leather seats in winter feel like sitting on an ice rink. Saab fixed it. Activated carbon cabin filtration in the 1960s, when most cars still had bent windows and called it climate control. The windscreen was curved in a very specific way that left more room for the driver's head in a crash, while simultaneously providing excellent visibility and improved aerodynamics. One design element, 3 benefits. And that distinctive concave shape at the rear of the car, that wasn't styling. That wasn't a designer trying to be different. Saab spent time in a wind tunnel in the 1960s studying how air broke over the trailing edge of the roof. They were trying to control wake turbulence. The shape you see on a Saab is the result of wind tunnel testing, not design sketches. Saab claimed it was tied with the Citroën DS for the lowest drag coefficient of any car in production. The DS, one of the most aerodynamically advanced cars ever built. And Saab said, yeah, We matched
direct
that.
impact force through
These
a
were
vehicle
airplane
in a
engineers.
controlled way.
They didn't know you weren't
In an
supposed to
airplane,
wind tunnel
these
test a
paths
family car in
distribute stress across the
1967.
airframe
They just
during
did it
hard
because it
landings,
made sense.
turbulence,
Now,
anything that
let's
puts
talk
strain
about
on the
who
structure.
actually bought these
When
things.
Saab applied
In
this exact thinking
1972,
to their
a
car,
study of university faculty
99
tracked an
features
uncanny
a
correlation
1-inch
between the
thick
car they
reinforcement
drove
running
and their
in a
political
perfectly
leanings.
straight line from
That
the
year's
top of the
presidential
A-pillar
election was the
down to the
second
base of the
largest
chassis.
landslide in American history.
Purpose-built to
Richard
protect
Nixon
occupants in
defeated
a
George
rollover.
McGovern.
They
Only
tested it by dropping the car from 8
37.5%
feet
of
in
the
the
public
air.
voted
The
for
car barely
McGovern.
noticed.
However,
That's not
98%
marketing
of
language.
Saab driving
They
academics
literally
voted
dropped
for
it,
him.
documented the
98%.
results, kept
The only
improving.
group more liberal than
The
Saab drivers
99 had
were
a
people who
structure
had no car at
approximately a
all.
third stiffer
There's something
than other
almost
cars on
poetic
the
about
market.
that. A car
Now, a
built
third
by
stiffer
Scandinavian
doesn't sound
engineers,
dramatic until you
designed with
understand
safety
what
and
that
efficiency
extra
and
rigidity
thoughtful
actually
details,
bought them.
attracting
First,
buyers who
crash
thought
safety,
differently about the world.
obviously.
The car was
But
a
also
statement
something
even when
nobody
you weren't trying to
expected.
make one.
The car didn't
But
squeak.
here's where
It
Saab
didn't rattle.
really predicted the
The
future.
doors closed with
In
a solid thunk
1978,
instead of a tinny
Saab
clang.
added a turbocharger
And
to the
because
99.
the chassis was so rigid,
Turbocharged
the
cars
suspension
existed
could do its
before
job
this.
properly.
The Porsche
The
930
handling
Turbo
was
had come out a couple of
exceptional.
years
All of this
earlier,
from engineers
but
who
that was a
figured
different
that if
animal
you're going to
entirely.
build a structure,
The Porsche
you
was
might
a
as well
purpose-built
build it
sports
right.
car. Wide
Now,
fenders,
here's where it
whale
gets
tail
interesting.
spoiler, designed to
The
go
99
fast and
lineage
look like it was going
introduced a
fast.
genuinely
The Saab was a
impressive list
family
of
car,
industry firsts.
and that distinction
The first ever
matters
side
more than
impact
you might
door
think.
beams.
Porsche's
Before
goal
this car,
with
nobody
turbocharging was
putting
outright
steel
performance.
reinforcement
Ultimate
inside
horsepower
doors
numbers, lap
specifically
times,
to
the kind of
protect
power that
passengers
made the
from
car
T-bone
genuinely
collisions.
difficult to drive.
Saab did it first.
Saab's goal
First
was
headlight
something else
wipers.
entirely.
Yes, really.
They wanted to maintain the
Little wipers for your
efficiency of a
headlights.
relatively
This
small
was Sweden.
four-cylinder
It
while adding
snows
the
there
smooth,
a lot.
effortless
Your
torque
headlights
of a
get
much
covered
bigger
in slush
engine.
and road grime,
Don't make the
and
engine
suddenly
bigger.
you can't see.
Don't add more
Saab's
cylinders.
solution was
Keep the
elegantly
small,
obvious.
efficient engine
The doors
and just make it
extended
work
past
harder
the sill.
when you need it to.
This
This
seems
is
like a
exactly
tiny
how
detail
modern
until
cars
you understand
work.
why.
Every
When you
turbocharged
get out of a
four-cylinder
car
on the
in
road
winter,
today
your
follows
pants
this
brush
philosophy.
against the door sill.
Your average
That sill
crossover
is covered
SUV
in road
runs a
salt and snow and
2.0-liter
dirt.
turbo because
You
it
walk
gives you
around with a gray
six-cylinder
stripe
power
on your
with
leg all
four-cylinder
day.
fuel economy.
Saab's doors
Saab figured
overlap
this
the
out
sill,
in
so your pants stayed
1978.
clean.
The 99
world's first
Turbo
seat
only
heaters.
lasted a year
Again,
in production
Sweden.
before the
Cold.
900 arrived.
Leather seats in
And the
winter feel
900
like sitting
is
on
where
an
this
ice
entire
rink.
philosophy
Saab
came
fixed it.
together into something
Activated
remarkable.
carbon cabin filtration.
From the driver's seat
In the
rearward,
1960s,
the 900 was
when most
identical
cars
to the
still had vent
99.
windows
Same
and called it
glass,
climate
same
control.
doors, same body
The
panels,
windscreen was
same
curved
hatch.
in a very
They didn't change
specific way.
anything that was already
It left
working.
more room for the
Changes
driver's
up front
head in a
addressed
crash,
new crash
while
regulations.
simultaneously
The
providing
wheelbase
excellent
stretched by 2
visibility
inches.
and improved
The front
aerodynamics.
extended by
One
8.
design element,
That
3
critical
benefits.
rollover load path
And
now
that
formed a
distinctive
Z-shape
shape
instead of a
at the
straight
rear of the
line, but it
car?
was still there,
That
still doing its job.
concave section
Every
that looked
feature
like
from the
nothing else on
99
the road,
carried over.
that wasn't
Now,
styling.
let's talk about
That
the
wasn't
engine
a
layout,
designer trying
because
to
it's
be different.
genuinely one of the strangest
Saab
in
spent
automotive
time
history.
in a wind tunnel
The
in
900
the
is a front-wheel
1960s,
drive car.
studying
Normal
airflow
enough,
brake over the
but the
trailing
engine sits
edge of the roof.
longitudinally, front
They
to
were
back,
trying to control
the way
wake
it would in a
turbulence.
rear-wheel
The
drive
shape
car.
you see on a
And
Saab,
it's located
that's
almost
the result of
entirely
wind
in
tunnel
front of the
testing,
front
not
axle.
design sketches.
Here's where it gets
The
weird.
99 also
The
had a
engine
flat
is turned
underbody
around
for
180 degrees
aerodynamic
backwards
efficiency.
and leaned over
Saab
at a
claimed it was tied
45-degree
with the
angle.
Citroën DS
Why
for the lowest
45
drag
degrees?
coefficient of
Because the
any car in
99's original
production.
engine was
The
half
DS,
of a Triumph
one
Stag
of the most
V8.
aerodynamically
The
advanced
8S
cars
used
ever built.
90-degree cylinder
And Saab
banks.
said, yeah, we
Cut
matched
a
that.
90-degree
These were
V8 in
airplane
half,
engineers.
and you get a
They didn't know you
45-degree
weren't
slant
supposed to
floor.
wind tunnel
The
test
engine
a
drives
family
the
car in
transmission via a
1967.
chain,
They just
not
did
a
it
direct
because
connection.
it made sense.
Yes,
Now,
a chain.
let's
This
talk
arrangement
about who
created some
actually bought
interesting
these
service
things.
situations.
In
Doing a clutch
1972,
replacement was
there
actually
a
more
study of
accessible
university
than on most
faculty
cars.
that
On a
tracked an
typical car,
uncanny
the
correlation
clutch is buried
between
deep
the
in the
car they
drivetrain.
drove
On
and
a
their
Saab
political
900,
leanings.
you could reach it without a
That year's
complete
presidential
teardown.
election
The
was
exhaust,
the
though,
second
the exhaust
largest
routing is
landslide
something
in American
engineers
history.
probably lost sleep
Richard
over.
Nixon
It exits the
defeated
side
George
of the cylinder
McGovern.
head and
Only
travels forward toward the
37.5%
headlight.
of the public
It
voted for
encounters the
McGovern.
turbocharger,
However,
then makes a U-turn and
98%
passes
of
within
Saab
approximately a
driving
quarter
academics
inch of the
voted for him.
battery's heat warning sticker.
98%.
A quarter inch.
The only group
Then
more
it
liberal
finally
than
routes
Saab
toward the
drivers
rear of the
were
car.
people who had
If you've
no
ever
car
wondered
at
why
all.
Saab owners develop
There's something
reputations for being
almost
particular
poetic
about
about
maintenance, this is
A car
why.
built by
The car
Scandinavian
awarded attention
engineers,
and
designed
punished
with
neglect.
safety and
Now,
efficiency
let's
and
talk about
thoughtful
what made the
details,
Saab turbo
attracting
system
buyers who
genuinely
thought
innovative.
differently about the
Because
world.
it wasn't just bolting
car
a
was a
turbocharger
statement,
onto
even
an
when
engine.
you weren't trying to
That's
make
the
one.
easy part.
But here's
Saab
where
developed
Saab
something
really
called
predicted the
APC,
future.
automatic
this is the
performance
part
control.
that car
This
enthusiasts
was the
have
first
been
system
arguing
to
about
automatically
for
reduce
decades.
boost in response to
In
knock.
1978,
Engine knock happens
Saab
when
added a
fuel ignites
turbocharger
prematurely
to the
from heat
99.
and pressure
Now,
rather than the spark
turbocharged
plug.
cars
It's
existed before
destructive.
this.
And
The Porsche
turbocharged
930
engines
Turbo
are
had come
particularly
out a
prone
couple
to
of
it
years
because
earlier,
the compressed air
but that
charge
was a
runs
different
hot.
animal
Most
entirely.
turbocharged
The
engines
Porsche
of the
was a
era dealt with
purpose-built
this by
sports
running
car.
extremely
Wide
low
fenders,
compression ratios.
whale-tail
The Porsche
spoiler,
911 Turbo
designed to go
ran
fast and look like it
6.5
was going
to 1.
fast.
Very
The
low.
Saab,
This gave
this
the
was a
engine room
family
to pile
car,
on boost
and that
without the mixture
distinction
getting hot enough
matters
to knock.
more than you
The
might
Saab
think.
900 Turbo,
Porsche's
toward the
goal
end
with
of its production
turbocharging
run,
was outright
ran a
performance.
compression ratio of
Ultimate
9
horsepower
to 1.
numbers,
That's
lap
a
times,
massive
the
difference.
kind of power
High
that made the
compression
car
means better
genuinely
efficiency when you're
difficult
off
to drive.
boost. You're not
Saab's
wasting
goal
energy
was
over
something
compressing
else
air
entirely.
unnecessarily.
They wanted to maintain
But it
the
also means
efficiency
more
of a
knock
relatively
risk
small
when the turbo starts
four-cylinder
pushing air
while
in.
adding the
The
smooth,
APC
effortless
system monitored
torque
for knock
of a much
and
bigger
automatically
engine.
reduced boost pressure
Think about that
when it detected
philosophy
any.
for a moment.
This meant
Don't
Saab
make
could
the
run
engine
high
bigger.
compression for
Don't add
efficiency
more
during
cylinders.
normal driving,
Keep the small,
then still
efficient
add
engine
turbo boost
and
for
just make
power
it work harder
without
when you
destroying the
need it
engine.
to.
Fill
This
it with
is
low-octane
exactly how
fuel,
modern cars
and
work.
it would make less power
Every
to protect
turbocharged
itself.
four-cylinder
Fill it
on the
with
road
premium,
today
and the system
follows
would
this
let the turbo
philosophy.
work harder.
Your average crossover
Sophisticated
SUV
engine management
runs a
in an
2-liter
era
turbo
when most
because it
cars
gives you
still had
6-cylinder power
carburetors.
with
The
4-cylinder
wastegate
fuel
design was
economy.
also unusual.
Saab figured this
Most
out
turbo
in
systems regulate
1978.
boost by monitoring
The
intake
99
charge pressure.
Turbo established
Saab's
the recipe
wastegate
for
reacted
today's
to
quietly
exhaust pressure
powerful
instead.
four-cylinder
This
cars.
changed the character
Not
of power
turbocharged for
delivery
racing,
entirely.
turbocharged
The
for
Saab
real-world
turbo's
driving.
torque curve more
Very
closely
much
resembled a
unlike the
larger naturally
turbocharged
aspirated
sports
engine
cars of the
than a
era.
turbocharged
The
one.
99
Peak
Turbo
boost was only
lasted
about
a
8
year
to
in
10 pounds
production
per square inch,
before the 900
not high
came
by
out.
sports car
And the
standards.
900
The
is
turbo
where this
engine
whole
made
philosophy came
135
together
horsepower
into
compared to the
something
naturally
remarkable.
aspirated
From the
version's
driver's seat
110.
rearward,
25
the 900
extra
was
horsepower,
identical to the
not
99.
exactly earth-shattering
Same
on
glass,
paper.
same doors,
But here's what the
same
numbers
body
don't
panels,
tell you.
same
The
hatch.
turbo torque
They
down
didn't
low made
change
the
anything
900
that was
Turbo
already working.
very quick in the real
Changes
world
up
at
front
real
addressed
driving
new
speeds.
U.S.
The
crash
car wasn't
regulations.
sluggish off boost.
The wheelbase stretched
High
by
compression
2
meant
inches.
it didn't feel like it
The
was
front
waiting for the
extended by
turbo
8
to wake
inches.
up.
That
It just
critical
felt like a
rollover
good
load
engine
path
that happened to
now
have more to
formed a
give when you
Z-shape
asked for it.
instead of a
This is
straight
why
line.
modern
But it was
turbocharged
still
engines
there,
work the way
still
they do.
doing its job.
Small displacement
Every
for
feature
efficiency.
from the 99
High compression
carried
for
over.
throttle
Quick
response.
thing.
Electronic
If you're enjoying
boost
this
management
deep dive
to
into
prevent knock.
unconventional
Tuned
automotive
for
engineering,
real-world power,
hit
not peak
subscribe.
horsepower numbers.
We
The
do stuff
Saab
like
900
this
Turbo
every week.
got there decades
Okay,
early.
back to the
The interior
Swedish
was another
weirdness.
area
Let's
where
talk
Saab's
about this
aircraft
engine
heritage
layout,
showed through.
because
Fighter
it's
jet
genuinely
designers
one of
worked
the
on the
strangest
dashboard
in
layout.
automotive history.
The result wrapped around the
The
driver for
900
easier
is a
access
front-wheel
and
drive
better
car.
peripheral visibility.
Pretty normal.
Controls were
But
clear,
the engine
easy to
sits
read,
longitudinally.
and positioned with the
That's
most
front to
frequently
back,
used
the
items
way it would
closest
sit
to the
in a
driver's
rear-wheel
line of
drive
sight.
car.
You didn't have
And
to
it's
hunt for
located
switches while
almost
driving.
entirely in
The
front of
radio
front
was
axle.
positioned up high.
Here's
This
where it
seems
gets
obvious
weird.
now, but
The
in
engine
the
is turned around
1970s and
180
early
degrees,
80s,
backward,
manufacturers
and
routinely
leaned
placed
over at a
radios down near the
45-degree
driver's
angle.
feet. You have
Why
to take your
45
eyes
degrees?
completely off the road to change
Because
a station.
the 99's
Saab
original
put it where
engine
you could see
was
it with a
half
glance.
of a Triumph
The
Stag
emergency brake
V8.
worked on the front wheels.
V8s use
This sounds
90-degree
wrong because
cylinder
almost
banks.
every other car
Cut
uses a
90-degree
rear
V8 in
emergency
half,
brake.
and you get
But
a
with a
45-degree
60-40 weight
slant
distribution
forward.
heavy in the
The
front,
engine
the
drives
front
the
wheels hold the
transmission
car
via a
on a
chain,
hill far
not a
more
direct
effectively.
connection.
They did
Yes, a
change this to the
chain.
rear wheels
This
for
arrangement created
1988,
some
probably
interesting
because
service
mechanics were
situations.
tired of explaining
Doing a
it.
clutch
The
replacement
ignition was
was
between the
actually
seats,
easier
down
than
by the
replacing
floor
the
console.
V-belts.
This
On
wasn't
most
Saab
cars,
being
the clutch
quirky
is
for its
buried
own
deep
sake.
in the drivetrain.
To remove the
On
key,
a Saab
you had to have the
900,
car
you could
in
get to
reverse
it pretty
gear.
readily.
The shifter
The
then
exhaust,
stayed
though,
locked in reverse.
the exhaust routing
Multiple
is
purposes.
something engineers
Drivers didn't
probably
need to
lost
use the
sleep
emergency
over.
brake in
The
icy
exhaust
conditions
exits
where
the side of
cables
the cylinder
freeze.
head
The
and
car wouldn't
travels
roll away
forward
if someone
toward
knocked
the
it into
headlight.
neutral.
It
And
encounters
most
the
importantly,
turbocharger,
it moved
then
the
makes
key
a
away from
U-turn
the area the
and passes
driver's
within
right knee would
approximately
occupy
a
in
quarter
an
inch of the
accident.
battery's
In a
warning
frontal
sticker
impact,
about
anything
heat
hard
exposure,
and
a
protruding near your
1/4 inch.
knee becomes a
Then
hazard.
it finally
The
routes
steering
toward the rear
column,
of the car.
the ignition key,
If you've ever
anything.
wondered why
Saab
Saab
moved the
owners
key
developed
somewhere it couldn't hurt
reputations as
you.
particular
Airplane
about
thinking
maintenance,
again.
this
Where
is
will body
why.
parts be during an
The car
impact?
rewarded attention
Don't put hard
and
objects there.
punished neglect.
You might be wondering how a car
Now let's
designed
talk
in
about what made the
1967
Saab
could
turbo
still be
system
competitive in the late
genuinely
1980s.
innovative,
A
Because it
20-year-old
wasn't just
platform
adding a
competing with
turbocharger
cars
to an
designed
engine.
a decade
That's
later.
the easy part.
The answer is
Saab
that the
developed
fundamentals
something
were
called
so
APC,
right they aged
automatic
exceptionally well.
performance
Saab
control.
reported sales
This was the
increases
first
every single
system
month
to
for 60
automatically reduce
consecutive
boost
months
in
from
response to knock.
1982 to 1987.
Engine knock
Every
happens
month
when
for
fuel
5 years
ignites
straight, on a
prematurely
car that
from
was
heat
2
and
decades
pressure
old at that
instead
point.
of from the spark
That
plug.
doesn't happen with
It's
normal
bad.
cars.
It damages
Normal
engines.
cars hit their peak and decline.
Turbocharged engines
The
are
market moves
particularly
on.
prone to it
Newer designs
because the
come out,
compressed air
and the
charge
old model
is hot.
fades. The 900 didn't
Most turbocharged
fade.
engines of the
It
era
kept finding new
dealt with
buyers
this
who
by
appreciated
running
what it
extremely
offered.
low compression
Automotive
ratios.
journalist David E.
The Porsche
Davis
911
described the
Turbo
900
ran a
Turbo in
compression ratio
1982
of
as a
6.5 to
Mercedes-Benz
1,
that wandered
very
out of the
low.
house one night during
This
an
gave the
acid
engine room
experience
to add
and
boost
was never
without
the
the
same
air-fuel
again.
mixture getting
He
hot
called
enough
it
to
an
knock.
existence in an
The
altered
Saab
state,
900 Turbo,
a marvelous
toward the end of
blend
its
of
production
solid
run,
citizen
had a
values with a
compression
proclivity
ratio
for
of
the
9
occasional
to 1.
breach of the peace.
That's a massive
His conclusion:
difference.
it was
High
a safe,
compression
practical
means
car
better
that you
efficiency
and the
when
family
you're
could
off
use to escape from the
boost.
cops.
You're not
That
wasting
captures the
energy
duality
compressing
perfectly.
air more than
Responsible
necessary.
engineering,
But it also
unconventional
means more knock risk
execution.
when the turbo
A
starts
car for
pushing
people who
air
wanted
in.
something thoughtful,
The
but
APC
refused to be
system
boring.
monitored for
The
knock
Saab
and
900
automatically
Turbo
reduced
wasn't a
boost
sports
pressure
car
when
pretending
it
to be a
detected any.
family sedan.
This
It
meant
wasn't a
Saab
family
could run
sedan
high
with a
compression
sporty
for
trim
efficiency
package
during
bolted
normal
on.
driving,
It was
then
something
still
genuinely
add turbo
different.
boost for
A car that
power
took the entire
without
automotive
destroying the
formula
engine.
and rethought it
The
from
car
first
could run on
principles.
low-octane
Should
fuel
safety
if
be a
that's all you had.
compromise?
It would
Saab
just
said
make
no
less power.
and engineered
Fill
load
it with
paths.
premium,
Should
and the system
efficiency
would let the
require
turbo work
sacrificing
harder.
power?
This
Saab
was
said no
sophisticated engine
and
management
pioneered practical
in an era when
turbocharging.
most cars still
Should good
had
handling
carburetors.
require a harsh
The
ride?
wastegate
Saab
design
said
was also
no
unusual.
and built a stiffer structure.
Most turbo systems
Should the driver
regulate
adapt
boost
to the car's
by
layout?
monitoring
Saab
intake
said
charge
no
pressure.
and hired
More
fighter jet
pressure
designers
means
to
more
make the
boost
car adapt
means
to the
you
driver.
open the wastegate
Every
to bleed
assumption
off
the
exhaust
automotive industry
and
made,
slow
Saab
the turbo
questioned.
down.
Not all of their
Saab's
answers were
wastegate
right.
reacted to
The
exhaust
backwards-leaning
pressure
engine with
instead.
exhaust routed
This
past
changed
the
the
battery
character
wasn't
of the
exactly
power delivery.
mechanic-friendly.
The Saab
But the
turbo's
fundamental
torque
philosophy was
curve
sound.
more closely
Start with what the
resembled a
driver
larger,
and
naturally
passengers
aspirated
actually
motor
need.
than a
Work backward from
turbocharged
there.
one.
Don't accept
Peak boost was
limitations
only
just
about
because
8 to
everyone
10
else has
pounds
accepted
per
them.
square inch.
This is
Not
why
high
people
by
compare
sports
Saab
car
to Tesla.
standards. This
Not
meant
because
it
of
didn't
electric
produce huge
drivetrains.
horsepower numbers.
Obviously, the 900
When the
ran on
APC
gasoline, but
first came
because
out,
of the approach.
The turbo engine made
Tesla came from
135
Silicon Valley
horsepower
and
compared
asked
to
why
the
cars
naturally
couldn't work like
aspirated
computers.
version's 110,
Saab came from aircraft manufacturing
25 extra
and asked why
horsepower.
cars couldn't
Not
work like
exactly
airplanes.
earth-shattering.
Both
But
found
here's what the
customers who
numbers don't
appreciated
tell
the
you.
different
When
perspective.
the turbo torque
The 900
down low
ended production
made the
in
900
1993.
turbo very quick
Saab
around
continued
town
for another
at
2
typical
decades
driving
before finally
speeds.
closing in
That
2012,
modest top-end difference
a
didn't
victim of
matter
corporate
much
ownership
because you
changes
spent most
and
of
the
your time in the part
2008
of the
financial
rev range
crisis.
where the turbo
But the ideas
actually helped.
pioneered in the
And
99
importantly,
and
the
900
car
live
wasn't
on
sluggish
everywhere.
off boost.
Every modern
High
turbocharged
compression
four-cylinder
meant it
with good
didn't feel
low-end
like it
torque
was
owes
waiting
something
for
to
the turbo
Saab's
to wake
philosophy.
up.
Every
It
car
just
with
felt
side
like a good
impact
engine
door beams
that
uses
happened to have
technology
more to
Saab
give
introduced.
when you asked
Every
for
vehicle
it.
designed with crumple
This is why
zones
modern
and load paths
turbocharged
reflects
engines work
thinking
the
that
way they
Saab's
do.
aircraft
Small
engineers brought to
displacement
automotive
for
design.
efficiency,
The
high
heated
compression
seats
for
keeping you
throttle
comfortable right
response,
now. Saab
electronic
did that
boost
first.
management to
The
prevent
cabin
knock,
air filter cleaning
tuned
the
for
air you're
real-world
breathing.
power,
Saab
not
did that
peak
first.
horsepower numbers.
The dashboard
The Saab
designed around the
900
driver
Turbo got there
instead of
decades
around
early.
what's cheapest
On
to
the interior
manufacture.
was another
Saab
area
pushed the
where
industry
Saab's
in that
aircraft
direction.
heritage showed
You can
through.
still buy one.
Fighter
They
jet
made
designers
hundreds of
worked on the
thousands of them.
dashboard layout.
Many are still
The
running.
result wrapped around
Values
the
have
driver
climbed
for
as
easier
people
access
rediscover
and
what
peripheral
made these
visibility.
cars special, but
Controls
they're
were
not
clear,
unobtainable.
easy to read,
Just know what you're
and
getting
laid
into.
out with the most
The backwards
frequently used
engine.
items
The
closest
exhaust
to the
routing
driver's
past the
line of
battery.
sight.
The ignition
You
between
didn't
the
have to hunt
seats.
for switches
These
while
cars
driving.
reward
The
owners who
radio
pay
was positioned
attention
up
and
high.
punish those who don't.
This seems
But
obvious
that's
now.
the trade-off.
But in the 1970s
You can have a car that follows
and
all the
early
rules
80s,
and
other
works like every other car.
manufacturers
Or
routinely
you can have a
placed
car
radios
built by
down
airplane
by the
engineers
driver's
who
feet.
thought the rules were wrong.
You'd have to take
The
your
Saab
eyes
900
completely
was
off
built
the
for
road
people
to
who
change the
chose the
station.
second option.
Saab put it where
98%
you
of
could
them
see it with a
apparently
glance.
also voted
The
for
emergency
McGovern.
brake